Welcome to the Optimistic Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we're talking about business strategy for digital entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Optimistic Entrepreneur Podcast. Everything you want to know to improve your business, strategy, startups, sales and marketing and more. Online or offline, we have you covered. Created just for you, the Optimistic Entrepreneur. If you want to be a successful digital entrepreneur, you pretty well have to rip up that expensive MBA that you've got. Now, I know how expensive it was because I've got one, but the whole world has changed and you really need to move with the times and understand what you have to do now to be a successful digital entrepreneur, because it's very different from the real world model of the previous century. The typical business model that you see is this hierarchical structure. Shareholders, CEO, it's all organized into divisions and it's all very vertically structured, and actually there can be quite a lot of difference and distance between the top and the bottom. It won't surprise you to know that this looks like a military plan, a military structure, and I think that's where it came from after the First World War and was adopted by business in the 20s, because it made command and control and organization very much easier. And you'll notice, you've got companies and you've got divisions, and these are military terms. Well, today's business looks very different. It's very much flatter, it's cellular, and you're very much closer to the client. So in essence, the management sits in the middle and then has integrated teams who then deliver products and services to customers. And on the outside of that are these very important people called influencers. So it's a completely different business model to the past. And you have to change your thinking completely in order to understand this and make the most of it. So instead of creating a physical business process with suppliers at one end and customers at the other end, you need to create a virtual business process, a virtual digital business process, and it's very, very different. Michael Porter, in his book Competitive Advantage, talked about the different strategies such as cost leadership, differentiation, focus, and these were all very useful when applied to competing in the 20s and 30s and 50s and 60s and 70s with products and services that you sold in the traditional way. But digital businesses have to deliver things in a completely different way. And when you look at cost leadership, which basically means selling things very cheaply, you don't have to be a cost leader, but you do have to differentiate yourself. You have to stand out, because in today's world, what you're competing for is time and attention. You're competing for your audience's eyeballs to get them to stop and listen to what you have to say. Now, part of that is about setting yourself up as an expert and as a thought leader. But you'll notice, instead of sending out adverts as you did in the 20th century and pulling people in, basically pushing your goods towards them, what you're doing now is you're pulling them in with the content that you're capturing their attention to, and they're turning towards you and paying attention to you. Prahalad and Hamill wrote a very good book in 1990 called all about core competencies, and argued basically that if you have core competencies in an organization, they will define the core products of the business. Today, digital entrepreneurs need to develop key competencies in digital skills, and they need to also understand how these integrate together. And I'm going to try and go through some of this in this video. So the key components to a digital business strategy are very different to the core competencies that Prahalad and Hamill talked about only 30 years ago. So to start with, you need to have some clear business objectives, because if you don't have these objectives, you have nothing to measure your success against. So you need to sit back and say, I'm going to aim to get $10,000 of sales, or I want my business to have $10,000 of sales a month. And that's going to be one of my key goals. And you may also think about how many customers you want, because you're building a list, you're building customers, and of course it's very easy to sell to customers, again and again online. You might want to measure the rate of growth of your business, because that can be very important. And if your business is lagging, how long is it going to take you to reach your core goals? And of course, critically important, you need to understand your profitability, because you can have a lot of money coming in, but if you're spending it all on product services from other people in order to sell your own products and services, then you may not make any money at all. The next step you need to do is identify your product offering. Now, because you're online and because you have a digital business, you can still sell real world projects. You might be selling on Amazon, you might be selling through your Shopify store, you may be a jeweler making jewelry and selling that on, but your sales and marketing process and your business will be largely digital. The fact that the product is physical is only the start of the whole business process. But classically, you may be selling digital products such as ebooks. You might be selling information such as courses. And these, of course, are very much easier to deliver than physical products, which you obviously have to post out. You need to think about your product pricing and how that's all going to work into your business in terms of your costs and your profit, and indeed the expectation that your customers may have for what they're prepared to pay for what you have to offer. And that's all about the value you're adding to them, bringing to them. So you need to think about payment plans. You need to think about additional bonuses you can incentivize your audience with in order to make them buy from you. And of course, guarantees are really important, because you need to take the risk away from them. It still feels a bit risky buying online, but if you give them a 30-day money-back guarantee, then that risk disappears and they can feel that they can buy from you with confidence and with trust. The next step is about defining your audience. Now, we talk about creating a customer avatar, which is a build-up of the personality and the type of person who is going to be the ideal customer for your business. And that in itself is quite a complex process. But think in essence who your product is for. And whatever you do, don't try to sell to everybody, because your product will not be for a lot of people. And you need to recognize that and make sure that everything you do is focusing on the key people who will get the most value and benefit from your product or service. Then you have to think about the product creation process. Who's going to do the work? How is this all going to be put together and created? Are you going to outsource any of it to people who have got creative skills that you don't? Where are you going to host these digital products? Where are you going to host your shop? Where are you going to put your products up for sale? What are you going to do about design? And what are you going to do about branding? So these are all factors to consider when you're trying to consider how you're going to create your product to make it available for sale. Then you need to think about the launch process. And this requires an awful lot of planning and preparation, because you need to make an impact. You need to get your message out to your prospects on the different channels that we're going to talk about in a minute. And this means often creating videos, creating blog posts, creating scripts that you may record and deliver in audio, creating images. And of course, you then need to think about getting the social proof, getting people telling other people how good your products are. And that means getting testimonials. And you need to think how you're going to put your testimonial plan into action so you can get these genuine testimonials from your early customers. And then, of course, you need to try to think about how you're going to sell. And one of the most effective ways is by building a network of affiliates. So you need to put that into your launch plan as well. And of course, you then need to have the technical side of setting up on the web the various pages and places where you are going to be placing all this content, which means not only your own website, but also landing pages, members areas, having a shopping cart that people can pay you through, having somewhere to run your affiliate program to make sure that affiliates can register properly and then get paid. And of course, all this has to join up. All this has to connect with each other, and it has to work, which means test, and then test again. Go through the process as if you're a customer and make sure it all connects. Your content plan is as much about your marketing content as it is about your product content. So you need to think about both. What content are you going to be creating for your marketing? What product content do you need to put together for your product? And of course, this also ties into any content you need to position yourself in the market ahead of time as an expert. And indeed, think about creating content for other people, such as somebody else's blog, where you can actually then reach out and get hold of them. And one example I use very often is when I'm podcasting. Bringing a guest onto my podcast means that I can get access to their audience, because they're going to want to go and tell their audience about this interview they've just done. The timetable is critical to this whole process. This is going to take quite a long time, and you need to factor this into your strategy. So you have to organize it from the very early stages all right the way through to the end. And that it means, thinking about your product and content creation timetable, when you're going to launch, when you're going to open the cart to sell, and when you're going to close the cart at the end of the sale process, and then the various actions you have to follow up after that. The program delivery phase, which is all about what you do after somebody has bought from you, requires a careful consideration, and it'll require quite a lot of your time as well. You'll need to interact with your customers, answer their questions, help them out, be there and be present, so that they'll really want to come back to you for more products and services in the future. Be prepared and have somewhere that you can respond to questions. Follow up with your affiliates. Make sure they get paid eventually after the appropriate delay, to make sure you don't get any refunds coming back to bite you. And then try and get feedback from customers. Hear about the bad things, put them right. Hear about the good things, turn them into a testimonial. So that's the sort of summary of the business process in a digital business. But I want to talk now a little bit more about sales and marketing, because this again is a complex but very different process in the digital world. Sales and marketing is very, very different. The core part of this is that you need to develop and nurture your audience. Your whole approach has to be very, very customer centric. Now, the key steps to this, or some of the key steps, because I'm obviously time limited in what I can tell you in about the whole thing today. It's a very complex subject. You need to think about your content platform, your organic traffic, your email strategy, your social media marketing, whether you're going to use paid ads, and of course you must use analytics to work out what's going on. Now, when I talk about content platforms, it's not just about having your own blog. There are lots of platforms out there where your audience can be found in social media, such as Pinterest, Quora, Reddit, obviously Facebook, Instagram, all these different platforms. And you need to think about which ones you are going to harness, and you shouldn't be trying to do them all at once. But find out where your audience is, and then try to focus on those platforms where your audience is most likely to be found. And of course, you need to have pages where you can actually bring people in order to get them at the top of your funnel to start coming into your funnel, and they're called lead pages. So you need to capture your organic traffic, and that's where the lead page comes in. But you need to give them something in return for them committing to you with an email address, and these are called lead magnets. So you need to develop small products which you give away for free in return for the email. And this will then enable you to start building your email list. And they say the money is in the list. And it's so true. You need to build and start to nurture the people inside your email list, and you do that with email campaigns. Now, all of this lead generation can be optimized with search engine optimization, SEO. So you need to have and be thinking about how that's working on the content you're creating in order to get the most bang for your organic buck, as it were. When it comes to social media marketing, what you're essentially doing is marketing for people's attention. You're trying to put out content there which is so interesting, so gripping, that they want to come and learn more from you. And this is called the top of the funnel. And if you think about funnels, I'll just put my clicker down for a moment. The top of the funnels go like this. And what you want to be doing is dropping people in the top of your funnel so they move through the funnel and they end up at the bottom buying from you. And this is all part of the process that I like to describe in very simple terms of know me, like me, trust me, pay me, and evangelize me. And you have to take people through these steps psychologically in order to get them to a point where they're prepared to give you money. They say that people won't pay for something until they've had at least 7 touch points with you. So you can't just turn up and say, hey, here's a product, buy from me. You have to nurture them through this process in order to put them into the frame of mind and the position mentally where they're ready to buy from you. We'll talk about paid ads briefly. If you want to accelerate the growth of your traffic, then paid ads is the way to go. And essentially, you're paying money to the advertising platforms behind Google, Facebook, YouTube, and they will then push your ads at people, and hopefully you'll get interest, clicks, and then eventually conversions in return. It does cost money. You need to know what you're doing to not waste a lot of money, but you can get substantially faster traffic growth. And if you have a system and a setup that is working, and you know it's working with organic traffic, then perhaps you can think about bringing paid ads to bear in order to accelerate the amount of traffic coming through the funnel. Because if you can get people coming in and it costs $1 to put them in and you get $10 out the bottom, you've basically got a money machine. Analytics scares people sometimes. Google have made it quite a lot easier with their Google Analytics platform, which is entirely free. And you find very often now that a lot of software packages have analytics built into them. And this includes A/B testing, which is basically when you have a version of a page and you take and make a copy of that and change one aspect of it and then see which one works best. And whichever works best, you keep it, and then you make another test with another variable, and whichever works best, and then you keep the best performing one, and you keep on going on like that, and that should increase your conversions for that particular page. But analytics will tell you what is working and what works, and that is what you have to focus on and make the most of. So we've mentioned funnels. All this means that in order to put your strategy into effect, your marketing strategy into effect, you have to coordinate and organize these different aspects into what is called a marketing funnel. So this is a structure which all interconnects and which takes people through step by step from them originally finding you to them eventually buying something from you. But of course, it can always be improved. So you need to be optimizing all the time, A/B testing all the time, measuring your analytics and improving in order to increase your conversions. I want to say something briefly before I finish about calls to action. These are critical, and you have to have them in mind all the time. Every step that you take one of your prospects through must lead to the next one. You mustn't put a piece of content out there of any kind without it having some sort of instruction at the end of it as to what customers or what prospects should do next. Links and leads is what you're really talking about. Taking them from that piece of content to the next piece of content, wherever it happens to be, and making it very clear to them what they have to do. And the simpler you make it, then the easier it will be for them to follow your instructions. And this can be as simple as just one click. So let's summarize. Digital strategy for digital entrepreneurs in the 21st century is totally different to the past. It means you're much closer to your customer. You have a much closer relationship with your customer. You have the ability with these digital tools to effectively have thousands and thousands of one-to-one relationships with your customer, which is amazing scalability, which in the past has not been possible. This means that although you have global access comes with the flip side, which is global competition, because if you can do it, everybody else can do it. So you have to do it better, or at least to the best that you possibly can. And remember that the most valuable commodity that your prospect has is their time. And their attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. They say that we now have an attention span which is shorter than that of a goldfish. Certainly under 10 seconds. So unless you get people's attention very quickly and get to the point and get them interested in what you have to say, then you'll never get them in the first place. So remember how important time is, and you have to factor that into your whole approach. I hope you found this helpful. It's digital business strategy for digital entrepreneurs. And if you can understand some of these concepts, and we're going to go through them in a lot more detail later on, but if you can start to understand how these concepts work, how they all integrate, and why you need all these different pieces, then this video has actually achieved its objective, which is to introduce you to business strategy for digital entrepreneurs. So I hope you found that helpful. If you want to get more of my Optimistic Entrepreneur podcast episodes, then please send a blank email to john@bcast.email. You'll also then be sent my ebook, How I Made $112,000 from Online Courses, and you can too. And that's a compendium of cheat sheets and checklists to help you create your first online course. And it's absolutely packed with amazing content, which I'm sure you're going to find very useful. Don't forget to please subscribe to the show wherever you're listening, and please also consider leaving a rating and review for the show too. As you can see from the fuzzy face here, I recorded that video a few months ago, and I'm now incorporating it into the new podcast show because it's absolutely bang on line, and it was actually designed to be part of a relaunch of my old podcast, but I've actually gone brand new with the Optimistic Entrepreneur. So where can you find the show? Well, obviously on Apple and all the other platforms. I'm also producing a YouTube version, so you can find the show on YouTube as well. There will be a link there in the show notes, and you can contact me at any time, john@jbdcolleague.com. If you've got any questions about entrepreneurship, I would love to hear from you. So that's it for this show, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon in the next episode of the Optimistic Entrepreneur podcast.